Thank you to everyone here. Sorry, I thought I'd be coming in after the responses there.
Yeah, okay,
apologies. Yeah, thank you. I know for ICSA, for ICOS that's here with us, and I know for the Agricultural Consultants Association. I guess, you know, I appreciate you've referenced there as well. I know the Water Framework Directive, I know in some of your opening statements, and the challenges, particularly around Uisce Éireann. I suppose that's what I'd really like to ask you a little bit more about, just on the Uisce Éireann. And I know you've responded to a number of the contributors here earlier already. But for Uisce Éireann and the water schemes, and I know Senator Murphy here has talked about sort of the water schemes that we're seeing across the country, but in what ways can we in government look at how to improve I suppose access? So number one is Irish Water, Uisce Éireann getting access to more funds, local authorities, you know, having the wherewithal for wastewater treatment plants. You know, that it's not solely landowners and farmers that are responsible for the water quality in Ireland alone, for example. To me, what I see here is that the water quality in Ireland has an immense number of stakeholders here. And I suppose what I want to see is that focus been brought to bear. I know that, for example, we have the increase, for example, in the septic tanks, you know, up to 12,000 this year. Do you know, but you know, what's going to be the take up on that? When you're looking at the increase in the slurry storage capacity, for example, you know, I know you're talking there about the TAMS grant and so on, but there's also other challenges around that. And I know that that's linking in around with local authorities as well in relation to that. So I guess my question, and apologies because I was literally putting a few together as I was just coming online, I didn't realise it was so quick, but I suppose my quick question would be, you know, how do we look at supporting Uisce Éireann in relation to meeting a lot of these requirements at many different levels outside of just the farmers and the landowners? And then I suppose secondly, in relation to things like using technologies to reduce this. And I very much welcome in your submissions that you've made. I mean, you've referenced everything that's been done there in terms of less, you know, low emission slurry spreading in relation to how, you know, you're looking at the reduction in fertiliser and how you've seen that and how you have the stats to back it up. But, you know, we are leading. Irish farmers and agriculture is a world leader in how we do things. What else should we be looking at? Where else can we support farmers in terms of being able to meet these requirements in engaging with that type of technology as well? So those two quick questions. And sorry, I'll ask perhaps, is it Sean, I think, or Eddie maybe from the ICSA maybe, and is it Edward that was speaking on behalf? Whoever would like to take the questions. Thank you very much. Okay,
lads, there's a series of questions there. So I'll start with ICSA and work backwards this time.
Uisce Éireann. Biggest problem we see is as farmers is you have the County Council disciplining their inspections of farmers, right?
Okay.
The County Council are the biggest polluters themselves, not the farmers. Like you heard, like a lot of our sewage out of most towns is running into rivers and streams and lakes all over the place. Like we see it ourselves. Like I'm not that far away from a town. I see the treatment plant now. It isn't just working. It's just go down the rivers and that's it. Especially with the wet weather, it's just running down the river. Now, I think before the council comes out and has the cheek to come out to inspect farmers, to have similar inspections of farmers, let them get their own house in order first, women the EIP. That's all I can say. There's no point in them coming out to us, torturing us as farmers. Oh, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you do this, you have to do that, you do that. Get their own house in order first. Like a lot of farmers, most farmers, I could say 99% of the farmers are compliant enough. They might have, like I said, the wet weather and things, they can get, something can happen through no fault of farmers' own. But most farmers are fully compliant. But as far as the councils are concerned and water treatment, sewage plants, like they're getting, like Uisce Éireann, they're getting serious money put into them for the last 10 years. I don't think they're any further on than they were 10 years ago. Whereas us farmers, we're getting nothing. We're doing nearly our own pocket.
Well, look at Sean, I would agree very much so about the wastewater treatment plants.
You know what I mean? And then another thing, they were talking about young farmers there and going, Danny was talking about young farmers going back to farming. Now, I have a young lad at farming with me.
Yeah.
And we've had our enterprise going on our farming. But there's no viable living for any young farmer farming anymore. We can forget about this. We can talk about what we like. We can talk about nature restoration. We can talk about natures. We can talk about what we like. But the big problem is what we're going to see here is in a very, very short time, is food security. It's food security. It's food security. That's going to be a big problem. Because the simple reason, we're going to lose a generation of farmers. That's for certain.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to lose it. The guy been out in Europe, and I was listening to Mike Fitzmaurice talking about out in Europe. I was out in Europe. One crowd is talking about food security, and another crowd is talking about cutting back in numbers. We see what's going on in England at the moment with the sheep. The Haiti's we see what food security can do. The Haiti's is bombing the boats on the Suez Canal, or bombing the ships in the Suez Canal. The New Zealand lamb can't come in England. What happens? Lamb has gone up to 8.20 or 8.30 in England, which wasn't seen in years. So that proves a point that food security is a serious issue. And that's, like, we can talk away for days and days about all this. A farmer should do this, a farmer should do that, a farmer should do that. But the main thing we have to look at is food security.
Food security and investment in wastewater treatment plants. Thank you.
Do you want to make a brief comment?
Just a brief comment.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll come on and say.
I have a son farming at home with me. He's in charge, and I have heard my wife saying on a few occasions, it's an awful pity that he didn't take another profession, because he can't get weekends off, he can't get evenings off. Yeah. He has a young family, 3 young children, and right now I don't see his sons taking on the farming because it's too big a job. That's all I have to say.
So the bureaucracy.
Yes,
Just on a number of questions there, Senator Murphy. Yes, farmers have got terrible PR over the last couple of years. And it's very unfair because, and you mentioned it there yourself, our first environmental scheme goes back to the mid-90s, the REP scheme, a very, very successful scheme, which I suppose initiated the idea of protecting biodiversity and protecting wildlife, water quality, and built into that environmental scheme was a nutrient management plan. And that hasn't been really built on with successful schemes, but there's a huge, huge buy-in from farmers all over Ireland to do these schemes and be part of it. We've seen in the last Acres 2 application there before Christmas, over around 9,500 farmers applied for it. Will they all get in? We don't know. There's a huge appetite out there. And yes, like farmers, and we see it ourselves, and we're dealing with farmers, we're at the coal face every day of the week, and many of us advisors are farmers ourselves. The hoops you have to jump through are huge. Yes, advice is needed, but at the end of the day, you know, the bottom line is it's a huge, huge asset to rural Ireland. The farming community in rural Ireland is actually huge. It goes hand in hand. And, you know, Breen here will talk about succession in a second. But the point I'm making is there's a huge appetite there. And we need more funding in the environment. If this is what's going to be going forward, yes, we're going to have wetter weather. Like people are saying now, our summers are in May and June. We need to get the silage made in May and June, hay made, because, you know, we've seen what happened this year from all over the country, even from the sunny southeast. You know, huge issues there, straw shortages, and you know, the roll on for that is obviously with suckler farmers. We have now a large number of farmers in organic. Straw sausages there as well for straw bedding. So again, you know, the money has to increase from Europe. This is what they demand. And in this current CAP plan, the money has been cut. Money has been cut, but yes, as farmers and advisors, we have to jump higher ditches. So again, that is just a comment on that, Deputy Murphy. Breen, you want to come in on succession?
Deputy Healy-Rae asked about succession. So there's various reasons, and I think our colleague down here at ICSA referenced it. You know, there's a lot of other attractions in the economy, and perhaps easier work. I take a personal interest in farm succession ourselves. We had an EIP in it, and a lot of that came out of it was there was a serious threat to the next generation taking over. And I think the lack of a sustained income over a long period is one of the factors. Also, the lifestyle choices. It's not just happening on the lower income farms. It actually is an issue actually on good viable dairy farms. Those lifestyle choices of getting someone to work 7 days a week. And again, the economy is creating attraction for those people also, even on a part-time basis. So we have to be very careful that we don't regulate farmers out of existence. Of course, there has to be deterrence, but there has to be a balance to try and attract the next generation into farming. In your response to your direct question, Senator Murphy, no, we don't have any communications with Antashka. That's your direct question on that. And then on one of the other things that Senator Dolan asked, yes, on the terms of the wetter climates and all of that, we see severe pressures in different parts of the country on the storage system over the winter period, and farmers trying to balance that. And I think maybe one suggestion is, I said it earlier, if I go to a farm next week, we're more or less telling the farmer that it could be 8 or 9 months on a positive side before they can initiate their progress. And we must reflect on that. I think it was almost 400 million was spent by farmers in TAMS too. And farmers think TAMS is a fantastic scheme. They're willing to spend despite the challenge we've talked about on income. And I think that they need to see a future over the next few years for that. And perhaps where an additional facility has been added to an existing farmyard, maybe we should be looking at a way of fast-tracking those, notwithstanding that they have to justify that it's able to meet other regulations in the environment. But at the minute, a farmer's probably waiting up to 9 months. And any farmers we've been on in the last couple of weeks, we're basically telling those farmers it will be 2025 before they can start any projects.
Okay. Aisling.
Thanks, Brian.
In relation to the technology, and I won't delay it here, just in relation to the technology, we have seen a fair bit of generational change on the dairy industry, which offers a more sustainable and more attractive income source rather than the dry stock farmers. The average age of the dry stock farmers that I deal with in Cavan is 70 years of age. You know, it's incredible. And younger farmers are more likely to adopt technologies. But I worked in the dairy business with Lakeland Dairies, the former Killashandra Co-op, and I've seen huge developments in terms of breeding of cows, in terms of efficiency, in terms of longevity, in terms of, you know, a cow bred for the place that she's been reared. I've seen farmers adopt technologies in terms of, you know, reseeding of swards, incorporation of clover. We've even moved towards multi-species swards. But dramatically, and the lads have already mentioned this, we've seen massive reductions in chemical fertiliser use here, you know, where there's more efficient planning and that technology there, and applying the right fertiliser at the right time. And what is welcome, as I said, the fertiliser database has really focused farmers' attention now on this. The most common question I'm asked on a day-to-day basis, what fertiliser can I use this year, Tom? And stay within the limits. And that's critically important.
It's absolutely incredible, Tom, on that as well as soil sampling.
Okay. Aisling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we're just going to address a few points there, Deputy Healy-Rae asked about the generation part of it. I've said it previously today, we have a generation of very well-educated young farmers who are very willing to take on the mantle of carrying on what we have into the next generation. But I think then there needs to be clarity brought to it, and on the way we legislate and the way we implement and regulate those legislation, because you must remember, this generation of farmers, we're the best in class at grassland management. That's known, the best all over, we're the best in the world. We have one of the best breeding policies. We have a breeding policy in dairy at the moment that's the envy of everywhere else in the world. And those technologies, like, I mean, the generation are willing to put that through. But we just gave the example earlier, there was 2,150 farmers affected by the derogation, moving the derogation from 250 to 220. 800 of those farmers were under 40 hectares, small family farms. They were literally put out of business. Simple as. They were just put out of business because of that one decision. And there'll be another 800 put out of business if we go back, if we reduce it any further. I'm not saying how far back we go, if we reduce it any further. So we have that generation, don't forget that, and we can be very positive about that. We have a very well educated, raring to go to produce food in this country, and it's the way we implement legislation that's going to dictate whether they can do it or not. They're willing to do it. And on the few other issues that the deputies brought up, I'd ask Niall to address some of them.
Yeah, thanks, Edward. Just on Senator Murphy's question, maybe on the effect on other countries that have gone to 170, and look, I can't give you any detailed economic analysis, but looking at protests lately, you know, there's a lot of discontent there. A lot of that is stemming from extra bureaucracy, red tape, restrictions, and they all have major concerns about generational renewal. You know, France in particular, I think, have serious issues there with lack of young farmers ready to take over. So it all plays into a kind of a negative sentiment there for younger farmers. On Deputy Dolan's question on the technology, look, as Tom alluded to, some of them are fairly basic technologies, but they just need more adoption. You know, the old nugget, the nutrient management plan. Every farmer in the country really should have a nutrient management plan with up-to-date soil samples. That's a pretty basic one. A few of the more recent ones, replacing chemical nitrogen with clover swards and mixed sward species, protected urea, lower protein concentrate now is being put out there as a means of mitigating the nitrogen part. Dolan slurry storage, it's a real basic one. Could you call it a technology? I'm not sure, but it's essential, and I think everything needs to be done to ensure that we have enough slurry storage, whether that's fast tracking planning applications and ensuring that there's a decent grant there for everyone to avail of. So, look, those few things, that'll be my take on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe just a quick word on group water schemes, because it was mentioned by Senator Murphy and Senator Dolan. They're part of the ICOS family, and we're very proud of that. And it's good to highlight their good work, and I suppose no different to the call there from ASA to be involved in the process, particularly in ASIP and the new EIP. I think it's important that all stakeholders are brought into the discussion and that can contribute to a solution here. So that's important.